Once upon a time, a long time ago, in a time we call the 1980s, there lived a young woman named Robin, and Robin was a South Sider, born and raised, and in her house on Oglesby, there was always music playing. Her father played jazz piano, and you could hear those notes running down the hallways. Her mother sang in the gospel choir, and so you could hear those joyful noises raising the roof. Her brother was always in the basement playing his albums, a little bit of funk, a little bit of soul, a little bit of rock. So you would hear Jimi Hendrix and James Brown and Parliament Funkadelic, Sly and the Family Stone, Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye bouncing off the brown paneling. Now, Robin loved all of that music, and she loved to dance, and she danced to all of that music. Her grandmother used to tease her and say, "Baby, you were dancing before you walked." Now, she danced all over that house, but she never danced in public. It made her too anxious, too self-conscious. Now, her girlfriends, on the other hand, they were living their best 22-year-old lives. They were clubbing every weekend. They were dressed like video vixens, and they would tell her stories about Chic Ricks, First Fridays, the dating game. And no matter how much she was a little jealous, she knew they were having a good time, it just seemed like it was going to be too much, too loud, too crowded, and so she never went. Now, one July night, it's hot in her car, the car she inherited from her brother, it breaks down. Now, this is the 1980s, so there is no cell phone. She doesn't have one. Her friends don't have one. This is a time, if you can imagine it, that you had to keep quarters in your pockets. And you had to memorize telephone numbers because in an emergency, you had to use what was called a payphone. Now, these payphones were everywhere. She wasn't worried about that, so she gets out of her car, she goes to find a payphone, she got to call her daddy, get her out of this. And as she's walking, she hears a sound. It's a thumping, it's a pulsating, it's a heartbeat. And it's rising above the other city streets, and it seems like it's calling to her somehow, and she starts to follow it. She's curious, what is that? And the closer she gets, she's trying to figure out, what is this? It's not her daddy's jazz, and it's not her mama's gospel, and it's not her brother's funk and soul, and it's not the disco that she's been listening to on the radio. It's somehow all of those things, ancient, old, and brand new. This is house music. She keeps following the sound. She's excited and curious, a little nervous. It takes her to a completely nondescript brick building surrounded by a bunch of other nondescript brick buildings. There's nothing that indicates what's on the other side, and the music is pouring out. So she steps inside, and she looks around, and she thinks to herself, this sounds like a club, but this does not look like a club. There are no red velvet ropes. There are no bright and sparkly people waiting to get chosen to get in. There's no bouncer. There's just one guy leaning on a black bar stool, taking some money and stamping hands. She steps inside, and it's a little dark. She can't really see what's going on, but a little bit of light is neon, and it's strobe, and there's a disco ball in the ceiling. As her eyes adjust to the darkness and she sees a bit of more light, she starts to see what's happening. There's some bodies in there, lots of bodies in there. And they're moving in syncopated rhythm. Hands raised to the sky. Hips swaying, feet stomping, fingers popping, hands clapping. Black bodies, unburdened, unfettered, unbothered, affirming, we are here, we exist, we are enough. And it occurs to Robin, she's seen this before somewhere. This scene is playing in her head. This she has seen when she goes to visit her grandparents. And they insist that no matter how old you get, girl, you are going to the Greater Mount Shippa Zion Baptist Church revival. And she sees that, and she thinks about that, and it occurs to her, that is where I have seen that kind of freedom. That is where I've seen that kind of a release. And she is in awe. And as she's watching this, still not dancing, by the way, she looks over into the corner, and she sees the DJ, and she can't see the turntables, but she can see his hands moving. That's the conductor. That's the maestro. That's the magician who is moving the crowd. She's still not dancing until the DJ plays, "You Ain't Really Down, Playing the Games You Do." I said, "Oh, you ain't really down. Your love was never true." Before she knows it, it's as if the music has picked her up and thrown her down on the floor. Well, not thrown her, dropped her down gently. Not in the middle of the floor, but on the side where she still feels safe, and then she starts to dance. It doesn't occur to her to be self-conscious. She's not anxious at all. Time and space stop. She feels so good. Now, Robin doesn't know this, but this is her baptism. This is her initiation. She's about to be a househead. Now when her friends ask her out, she says, "Yes, please." She goes to the club. She goes to the warehouse, the power plant, the loft, Limelight, Music Box, that would be spelled with a Z. And when she's not in a club, she's in a basement or a backyard. She knows the DJ. She knows all of their music. Frankie Knuckles, Farley Jack Mustard Frunk, The Chosen Few, Hot Mix 5, Steve So Curly, Lady D, and Lori Branch. She dances over time. She dances throughout the highs and the lows of her life. She dances as house music moves from the underground to the mainstream. She dances as the clubs that she used to frequent are now parking lots and banks and condos. She dances when her knees start to creak and her back starts to moan. She keeps dancing because she has to, because for her, house music is so much more than rhythm and sound. It's connection. It's community. It's her balm, it's her liberation, it's her refuge. For Robin, it's life. Thank you.